Mr. Holmes, do you feel that cutting job training funds will be helpful to the efforts of getting the unemployed back to work?
I think that the question of training, again, is a matter of targeting the training to employment. And so the question really should be, how are we in...
You think we can cut the overall level of job training funds and still come out ahead for the unemployed?
Again, I think it depends on how you target the funds that are available.
Mrs. Cox, how do you feel about cutting job training funds?
Well, two things on that piece. First, when you talk job training funds, before I talk cutting, I would say first give states flexibility. Right now, states have to deal with formulas set up by the feds of where we can allocate those resources between youth, dislocated workers, and adults. So I have already very little funds in that area, just almost $7 million, and almost half of that's for youth. I've got kids, would love my kids to work, but when we're talking about dislocated workers, my first preference would be that we have that ability to switch funds between youth, dislocated workers, and adults.
You don't want to see your total amount of funds cut. You want more flexibility in how they're used.
I would say we're already struggling with training dollars, but I always think there's deficiencies. Right now, when I look at the bureaucracy in terms of system design, I do think there's some waste. And I don't think we'd want to cut training dollars, but I think we would want to look at system design and cut where the waste is and try to leave the resources for training there as much as you can, but I would certainly not be opposed to reducing bureaucracy.
If you can identify any specific areas of waste after your testimony today, supplement that. I think we'd all like to have it because we all want to ferret out waste. Dr. Boucher, I think that there is some merit to the approach that Commissioner Pauken has described of the Texas Back to Work program, but I have some concerns going forward about financing it by taking money from extended unemployment benefits. And I wonder if you might respond with your opinion on that.
Well, I think that there's a couple of issues. First off, the money that goes out for the unemployment insurance system is supposed to help folks who are unemployed, while they job search. And so certainly we both want them to be job searching, but we need to make sure that the solvency and that those funds are still being used for the unemployment insurance system. And we've already heard up here today that there is a number of problems with the system. Most of the states are insolvent. It doesn't seem to make a lot of sense to take monies from a system that already is having trouble to put it towards something else. And I think that's connected to the conversation that the House is also having about whether or not you want to cut those job training programs. It doesn't make sense to cut those training programs in half. You're sort of robbing Peter to pay Paul, if you will. But I also think that that there's a couple of things. I mean, while training programs are certainly important and we need to get folks into them, we need to make sure that we're training people for both jobs that exist and that we're recognizing the demand problem in front of us. One of the things about the labor market right now is that it's not the case that every worker needs that is unemployed needs to get their high school diploma or needs vocational training. When you look at the long-term unemployed, for example, among unemployed managers who make up 1 in 10 of the unemployed, 46% have been searching for a new job for at least 6 months. But among construction workers, who are only 1 in 14 of the total unemployed, only 36% have been searching for a job for at least 6 months. So it is not the case. Those folks who are disproportionately long-term unemployed are in fact in managerial occupations and other occupations where a GED or vocational training may not be appropriate. So I think your point that you said at the very beginning, the problem isn't the unemployed, it's unemployment, and that we need to focus on demand is a key part of this issue.
Commissioner Pauken, I know we won't convince each other about some of these points, but specifically on the issue of the $500 million of unemployment funds that Texas did not take, didn't your office, as well as the Legislative Budget Board, determine that for almost the next decade there would be no additional burden on the state of Texas by taking those?
Congressman Doggett, we were prepared to, in fact, I came up to Washington last year, met with some members of the Texas delegation to devise a program whereby we would get the $550 million, do what the Congress mandated, but at the time when the federal money had run out, been fully exhausted, then we would be permitted to have a sunset provision. It's a simple 2-paragraph amendment, and unfortunately, it got rejected. And so the reality is I just think this is a philosophical matter. I think it's a move to federalize state unemployment laws, and the idea that a state is under a federal law even after the federal funds have run out, I think is an overreach on the part of the federal government.